I'm very, very pleased to welcome our Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, David Gauke, who is going to be our final speaker today before I close. So we have had all four of our ministers from the Fraud, Error and Debt Task Force here today. So David Gauke.
Well, thank you, Leslie, and good afternoon. We're nearly there. I'm delighted to be here today, and I'd also like to thank Experian and SAS for sponsoring today's important event, and also thank those involved in the day's thought-provoking breakout seminars on such an important issue, tackling financial loss in government. Cutting down on fraud, collecting what we're owed, and preventing the accumulation of debt is vital to protecting the integrity of our tax system and protecting the nation's revenue. And it's a huge task. In 2010-11, HMRC collected £469 billion worth of tax and paid out more than £40 billion in benefits and credits. That is an awful lot of money, I'm sure you'll agree. Virtually every person and business in the UK engages with HMRC, and the vast majority fulfill their responsibilities, pay the right amount of tax, and claim appropriate benefits. However, there are a small minority that don't. That element of fraud and unpaid tax debt cripples growth, distorts the market, imposes an unfair burden on the honest majority, and prevents money from reaching the critical public services that need it. And in the current economic environment, taking a firm grip on tax collection is more important than ever before. Facing the deficit that we do, we have a substantial challenge to balance the books, and that means it is essential that we ensure everyone pays their fair share. In September last year, HMRC published its estimate for the financial year 2009-10, which showed a tax gap of £35 billion. This represents around 8% of total liabilities, but at the same time, that does mean that 92% of tax due is collected, which compares favourably with our international peers. The United States, for instance, has just this year announced their latest tax gap figures, and they show that 85.5% of tax due is collected by the IRS. But of course, that's no reason to be complacent. HMRC is at the forefront of the nation's deficit reduction ambitions. That's why at the last spending review in 2010, the government made a reinvestment of £900 million in HMRC and targeted additional revenue of £7 billion a year by 2014-15. That's £7 billion on top of the existing target of £13 billion of additional compliance revenue, which HMRC will detect and collect by them. Realising that additional revenue means, first and foremost, taking a more intelligent approach to tax collection and developing a deeper understanding of customers and their behaviour when interacting with the tax system. It's exactly the approach that HMRC have been taking through its customer segmentation strategy, segmenting customers between those who are willing and able to pay tax, through to those that are potential or deliberate rule breakers, and those who are organised criminals systematically attacking the Exchequer. As a result of this segmentation, HMRC have been able to target its resources more efficiently and effectively. It means that HMRC's most highly qualified face-to-face intervention staff can focus their efforts on tax evasion, and less serious cases where tax has been unpaid by mistake or carelessness can be dealt with through remote intervention methods. And because of that risk-based selection and prioritisation, HMRC has driven ever greater efficiency and effectiveness. From 2005-06 to 2010-11, HMRC has increased compliance revenue from £7 billion to £14 billion, and has done so at a time when compliance resource actually decreased by around 20%. It's a remarkable achievement and testament to HMRC's leadership and innovation to deliver ever greater tax compliance. Of course, a critical part of that success is rooted in HMRC's work to counter fraud. Indeed, of the additional £7 billion a year in revenue that we have targeted by 2014-15, £4 billion will come from the fight against fraud. It's a fight that has been led by HMRC's enforcement and compliance teams to prevent, detect, and disrupt tax fraud. It goes without saying that the best way to tackle fraud is to prevent it happening in the first place. However, we have to balance the protections that we build into our systems and processes with our ambition for a simple, easy-to-use tax system for the honest majority of taxpayers. HMRC's customer segmentation approach is critical to ensure that its focus is on the riskier customers. But on top of that, HMRC are giving customer-facing staff fraud awareness training to help them spot rule breakers. We're making it quicker and easier for them to refer suspicious cases for further investigation. Furthermore, as more of HMRC's systems move online, it has to shore up its online security. That's why we are creating a specialist cybercrime team to improve HMRC's response to cyber-enabled attacks, as well as introducing online transaction monitoring and improved automated risk analysis, something that will enable us to identify and stop criminal behaviour in real time. Even with this commitment to prevention, we know that however hard we try, fraud will still occur. And when it does, it's vital that HMRC can accurately and swiftly detect it. Being able to do so requires not only maximising the amount of information and intelligence to hand, but also developing the capacity to analyse the data. Of course, since the department interacts with virtually every single person in the UK, HMRC already holds vast amounts of information regarding its customers. And that information is bolstered by additional intelligence from an array of sources to help in its fight against fraud. A network of overseas fiscal crime liaison officers, covert human intelligence sources, informants to you and me, and of course information received from the public. HMRC also gathers a wealth of third-party information on such things as bank accounts, property transactions, and through its web robot, which trawls the internet for data. The sheer volume of information, so daunting in size, would normally defy analysis. Yet HMRC is successfully mining the data, applying innovative analytical techniques and investing in skilled analysts and state-of-the-art tools to get the most out of this information. Take, for example, the jewel in its analytics crown, Connect, a state-of-the-art risking tool that helps HMRC to more easily identify those individuals seeking to abuse the system. By cross-matching 1 billion HMRC and third-party data items, hidden relationships between people and organisations can be uncovered, and suspicious cases escalated. And Connect has already had a significant impact on the efficiency and effectiveness of HMRC's compliance activities. Thus far, the Connect project has already made a return on the initial investment of over 20 times and has generated around £1.4 billion additional tax yield. And I have to say, having seen it in action, it is hugely impressive. Other government departments, industry bodies, and commercial organisations are now all looking to HMRC for how to apply these techniques and skills to their businesses. But as well as leading the field in prevention and detection, HMRC is also demonstrating its innovative leadership in its efforts to disrupt fraud. HMRC's campaigns approach in particular has already resulted in much international attention and imitation. These campaigns identify a specific population target. Recent examples include medics, plumbers, and private tutors, and provide opportunities for these people to voluntarily put their tax affairs in order and become tax compliant. This approach makes it easy and straightforward to people to change their behaviour and become compliant. To date, the total yield from voluntary disclosures prompted by the campaigns stands at over £500 million, and where individuals choose to remain non-compliant, these campaigns make it easier to detect them. For example, the recent Plumbers campaign has so far led to 10 criminal investigations being launched. Hand in hand with encouraging voluntary disclosures, last week HMRC also launched its new contractual disclosure facility. Under the new facility, HMRC will contact a taxpayer in writing to inform them that they are suspected of serious tax fraud and offer them the opportunity to enter into a contract to disclose that fraud within 60 days. In return, HMRC will seek a civil settlement for the tax, interest, and a financial penalty, rather than pursuing a criminal investigation with the risk of prosecution. This isn't going soft, it's being effective, providing certainty for those who want to cooperate with HMRC that they will not prosecute, and for those that don't, there is a clear risk of prosecution. In that spirit, we are also taking decisive action to crack down on deliberate tax evasion through new task forces. These task forces bring together experts from HMRC, from across HMRC, bringing together risk and intelligence, criminal and civil disruption teams, and other law enforcement agencies, such as the UK Borders Agency, to target high-risk cases of tax fraud. 11 of these task forces have already been launched in Scotland, London, and North West England, including one that focuses on scrap metal dealers in Scotland, with at least 20 more being deployed each year for the next 3 years across the whole of the UK. And they have already brought immediate success. Through its London Fast Food Task Force, HMRC recently identified and visited 85 businesses in London in a matter of months, and identified underpayments and tax evasion in each outlet investigated. I've been hugely impressed by the enthusiasm and commitment of these task forces, and I'm not the only one. The press reaction has been overwhelmingly supportive of HMRC's approach, and I'm eager to secure as much coverage as we can for the task forces. We want tax evaders to know that HMRC is coming after them, so that they can come forward and put things right. Otherwise, they face a heavy fine, a possible criminal prosecution, and even a jail term. As these various initiatives have demonstrated, tackling fraud and evasion in a modern and sophisticated society has required us to take new and innovative approaches, capitalising on new technology, bringing together experts across different fields and different departments, and in an increasingly globalised world, working with our international counterparts to tackle offshore tax evasion. We are determined to track down unpaid tax and reclaim it, whether it's in the UK or not. We've already made huge progress on this agenda. For instance, through the HMRC-led Liechtenstein Disclosure Facility, banks in the tax haven must identify persons who may have a UK tax liability. HMRC originally expected to raise about £1 billion from this measure, but early indications already suggest that the eventual figure will be substantially higher. Furthermore, using relevant legal gateways, last year the French revenue authorities passed HMRC bank account information relating to approximately 7,000 British and Northern Irish customers of HSBC in Switzerland. As a result, about 850 customers are already under investigation for tax evasion, and HMRC has started writing to a further 6,000 customers to provide them with the final opportunity to disclose any tax irregularities. Over 80% of those contacted so far have responded. Finally, in October last year, we also finalised a groundbreaking agreement with Switzerland on tackling tax evasion. It's an agreement that will provide HMRC with unprecedented information on accounts in Switzerland and will help bring in billions in further tax. Across the board, HMRC is bringing a higher level of coordination, information sharing, and strategic targeting of tax evaders. Protecting our system against criminal attacks requires similar endeavour. In the spending review, this government committed to recruit and train an additional 200 staff to work as criminal investigators, and all are now in post. We're already seeing a sustained increase in cases being adopted for investigation, and we continue to have an active and fruitful partnership with the prosecution service across the UK. This year, we estimate that at least 500 new cases will start to be investigated, but our aim is to increase the number of criminal investigations to around 1,200 per year by 2015. And it's the same vigilance HMRC is demonstrating within its own rules. Like all large organisations, HMRC has to tackle the risk of low-level administrative fraud, like expenses fiddling and property theft, pencils included, which open the door to more serious cases. The first offence is preventing those potential wrongdoers from entering the organisation, and HMRC strictly adhere to the Cabinet Office pre-employment guidelines and HMRC charter record check. But where internal fraud does take place, decisive action must be taken to remedy the situation, including dismissal and imprisonment where necessary. And HMRC have publicised cases where action has been taken to help promote a strong anti-fraud culture across the organisation. Working at HMRC requires the utmost integrity and honesty. It requires a commitment to work together towards ambitious and stretching targets, and it requires trust, inquiring minds, and a willingness to experiment, and yes, sometimes fail, in order to develop the new and innovative means to improve the tax system. Now, I've already highlighted how we are putting that innovation to use in our anti-fraud work, but it's exactly the same endeavour we are applying in tackling debt. Here too we have a difficult challenge ahead. In the debt report published last week, government-wide debt was calculated to be around £25 billion, of which HMRC's share was a little over £19 billion. That's why HMRC has been actively transforming its debt operations, engaging with the private sector to add capacity, and using professional debt collection agencies where it makes sense to do so. And in pursuing world-leading innovative strategies to fundamentally transform its approach to debt collection, chief of which has been incorporating the latest behavioural techniques, as Professor Ariely has explained, to nudge people to do the right thing. When it comes to debt collection, or any policy aimed at changing behaviour, it's not simply enough to tell people what the right thing to do is, or that it's in their interest to do so. People are influenced by a variety of other external factors: social norms, emotions, ego, the source of communication, all of which alter how people will react to the message. And it's in that context that we have to shape and implement policy. Behavioural policy is about changing behaviour, not just minds. And it's an approach that has already had a significant impact on debt collection in the UK, targeting those people who could have paid the tax on time, but have either failed to do so or have chosen not to do so. For instance, HMRC has altered the way they write letters chasing debt to include social norms and other levers. And the results are staggering: 5%, 10%, and even 15% improvement in debt collection simply by adding a new sentence in a letter or changing a few words. As another example, HMRC are assessing the impact of asking self-assessment taxpayers to sign their returns at the start of their tax return. And the evidence is persuasive. Merely asking someone to sign the form up front significantly reduces the likelihood of them providing false information. Together, these and other changes have helped HMRC to drive down its debt balance, down £6 billion since 2009, and I'm delighted to say, and relieved, that the amount of debt owing to HMRC remains on a clear downward trend. There is, of course, much more to do, but fresh thinking and new approaches to delivery are showing great promise, and we're already delivering some excellent results. The report shows that these ideas, along with ideas and best practice being developed across government and the private sector, can and should be applied more widely. Doing so will benefit the whole of government by improving its own cash flow, reducing losses from bad debt, and by reducing costs. That's why last year I proposed to Francis Maude that we should initiate an urgent cross-government review of debt, and why I committed substantial resources and expertise from HMRC to help with that. The interim report on debt published last week fully justifies the belief which Francis and I shared, that across government there is an urgent need for all departments, including HMRC, to continue to raise their game, learn from and help each other, and consider new public and private sector delivery mechanisms. Together we must tackle the culture of late or even non-payment of debt to government, a culture which is not only deeply unfair to millions of citizens who pay their share, but also generates a lot of entirely preventable costs which in the current climate are simply no longer affordable. I'm hugely grateful to HMRC for all the tremendously hard work it is putting into increasing revenues and help cut the deficit by clamping down on tax cheats and debtors. It has had great success to date in increasing its compliance yield, which has improved by almost £7 billion in 5 years. Crucially, this success hasn't come about by accident. It has been achieved because HMRC knows where its problems lie and it knows how to go about sorting them. Tools like Connect and targeted interventions like campaigns, task force and the contractual disclosure facility are all key elements in its efforts to fight fraud and will play a vital role as it takes its work forward. And as today has demonstrated, HMRC is not the only government department taking innovative steps in tackling fraud, error and debt. HMRC, working with the Cabinet Office and the Department for Work and Pensions, both of whom have also made very significant progress. My ministerial colleagues and I will continue to provide the support our respective departments and the hard-working civil servants within in maintaining this momentum and focus. Over the next 3 years, there must be greater collaboration between Whitehall departments, building on the fine work already undertaken between HMRC and DWP in the area of benefits and tax credits to make a single fraud investigation service a reality. These two departments will carry on leading the way, working closely with other departments and the private sector to exchange information where the gateways exist and share good practice in tackling fraud, error and debt. Of course, prevention should always be the preferred approach. HMRC and DWP have shown with fantastic systems like Connect, Feast and Atlas that savings can be made and revenue protected if we make better use of data and data analytics to identify fraud and error before they happen. Of course, we must always be mindful of genuine cases of hardship and provide people with a real chance to settle their debts without government intervention. That's why we continue to support them with policies like HMRC's time to pay arrangements. But where fraud and error does occur, we need to have the capacity to swiftly identify cases and undertake remedial action to punish those who have done wrong. With the ever-increasing complexity and globalized nature of tax affairs, that means we have to pursue ever more innovative and joined-up strategies to tackle fraud and error, working between agencies, departments and international boundaries to protect the integrity of all our tax systems. And where we do have success in tackling fraud, error or debt, as HMRC has done over the last year and more, we have to share our best practice across government. That's why we will seek to bring consistency to the legal sanctions used by different departments, and it's why we will continue to build on the established practices in government, as well as trialling new techniques and ways of working. Based on the results of these trials, we will establish between departments whether there is a business case for change by the end of this summer. The reality is that tackling fraud, error and debt in government is up to all of us in the public sector. It's up to all of us to be vigilant and to recognise fraud, error and debt when, not if, we find it. And it is up to all of us to ensure that where we find fraud, error or debt, we move swiftly to tackle it head on to protect revenue and realise more money to help tackle the deficit. Thank you very much.